Hi, awesome internet people. Isn't today just a great day to discuss something serious and heavy and make sure to make everybody mad or even worse? I think so. So today we're going to discuss Christianity and veganism. The background for this video is that a few months ago, James Aspey, he made a video about how he snapped when he talked to a Christian guy during one of his speeches, and he just really needs some help on how to convert Christians to veganism. So that's what I'm going to give him. I got some help. There's a big Facebook group called Christian Vegans, and I asked them to bring me all of the best Christian meat eater arguments they've ever come across and that has ever been used against them. So I have a long list of arguments that I'm going to go through at the end of this video. And I will list them in the description below so you can see if you need a specific argument and you need some background for that argument, you can just check that out as well. One mistake that I see a lot of atheists make, and that's whether they're vegan or not, is to enter a debate with a Christian already having decided that Christianity is just as silly as believing in Santa Claus. Let me tell you one thing. You are never, ever going to convince me of anything if your starting point is that I'm stupid and naive. Try and think of Christians as people who have a belief system that is just as valid and real as yours, even if you disagree with it. Nobody can prove that God exists, but you can't disprove it either. It's just, in your world, it's very unlikely that God exists, and in my world, it's very likely he exists. This also means try to meet the Christian person in his beliefs. I have an example. A Christian person comes to you and says, "But God created animals for us to eat." And you can either answer, "Well, God doesn't exist. How stupid are you? That's like believing in Santa Claus." Or you can answer, and maybe surprise him a little, "Well, I'm pretty sure the Bible said that God created the world vegan in the first place, but we can check it out together." You see, there's a big difference. With one of them, you both leave this table narrow-minded as you came in. With the other, you start a general discussion that could lead to something good. Why not take the second option? What I'm trying to say here is there is a 50-50% chance that God is real and that God is not real. So debate like that. Another great tip is to remember that a good debate does not mean that everybody changes their view according to your worldview at the end of the debate. You can have the best arguments in the world and still people have to hear them a dozen times before it even sinks in a little. So have patience with people when you debate them, and have patience with Christians, because they've grown up to have an entire belief system set for them. And in Christianity, normal Christians who aren't vegans don't really pay a lot of attention to what they eat. It's like it says in the Bible you can eat anything, and fair enough, then we don't really think about it that much more. We put all of that behind us and don't pay any attention to it. So it's brand new information to even think about this as a possibility. So have some faith in them and have some patience, please. And then a little thing, if he is just a troll, maybe remove yourself from the debate, because that'll just trigger you and make you snap. And I kind of feel like the guy James Aspey spoke to was a little bit of a troll, and I feel very bad for him, because then you don't stand a chance against trolls in a valid argument. If you don't leave, eventually he's gonna anger you, and that'll just prove his point even more, that vegans are some angry militant people. And you don't want that, because that's not true and everybody knows that. So just remove yourself from that debate. Don't be in that space. Love yourself enough to leave. Now we're ready for part 2, the Christian meat eater arguments. And I'm just gonna go through them one by one. And as I said before, you can go down to the description and see where the arguments are for you to just have an easier time using this for something. The first argument that we hear all over the place is God made animals for us to eat. this is the one most used argument in my experience. And it is fundamentally wrong, because it's one of the first things in the Bible. It's clearly stated that God created animals for us to have companionship. Okay? Animals are made to be companionship for us. That means we have to take care of the animals. Humans are the most clever animal and the one that's most like God. So we're the animal that has the responsibility to take care of the rest of the animals and the world that God created. And animals are companions for us. God created Eve because animals were not a equal companion for Adam, but they are still companions. Very important point. Another argument: vegans are the antichrist, or vegans are demons. And this is because of a small passage that Paul says that the times before the world ends, you'll see people forbidding you from marriage and forbidding you from eating certain foods and stuff. And in some translations of the Bible, it says eating certain meats. But meats here does not refer to the animal flesh. It refers to food. And a lot of other translations specifically says food. You could wonder if this passage means something like people telling you you have to eat raw food or gluten-free or something, because it speaks about all of these things that God created for us to enjoy, and people who want to forbid that, but one can only speculate about that. Another argument is like, I'm gonna die whenever God intends me to die, so I'm gonna eat animal products because who cares? This is referring to the health argument, that it should be healthier to eat a vegan diet than a meat eater diet. And this argument in general is just horrible. Please don't accept it if anybody tries to use it, because the logic is so flawed. You can put any other thing in that sentence and it would be complete bullshit. Like, I'm gonna die whenever God wants it, so I'm not gonna wear a safety vest or a safety belt, or I'm trying to drink this acid or put my head in the mouth of a lion or whatever. Any kind of risk behavior. That God knows our faith doesn't mean that we should just lay back and don't care at all. God wants us to care, and the Bible is filled with that. He wants us to take care of our body as it's a temple for God, and He wants us to take care of ourselves. It's obvious so many places in the Bible. So just don't listen to this very ignorant argument. Then there are different formulations of the same arguments. It's like humans are of higher value than animals, or on the other side, veganism tends to elevate animals above humans. And this argument have a lot of ways to be said, but generally it criticizes the fact that humans are over animals, and if it's the opposite or equal, it's apparently horrible. But there is a long stretch from humans, animals, and then just like endlessly torturing and slaughtering billions of them. Where did that get equal just because they're lower than us? And I think it's very important to question that. So we can just agree with the Christian, it's not going to hurt your argument, that animals are worth less and they are not created in the image of God, but then remind them that the lion and the snake and the sheep are going to be in heaven. Animals are going to be in heaven. They're not, and God cares about the sparrow that falls. There is a difference, but God never implicated that difference was to needlessly slaughter and kill these animals. Another argument is that there is plenty of animal sacrifice in the Bible, and there really is. It's a lot of sacrifice. But this argument does not compare to the fact that we eat animals today. We don't eat them because we sacrifice them, we just eat them. And if anything, this tells us that we might reconsider eating animals today, because all of the animal sacrifice were before Jesus died. And this could be an implication that we should stop slaughtering animals now, because Jesus has died. He was the final sacrifice. And now We are free to not kill anyone anymore. We don't have to. Isn't that amazing? And why don't we use that for the animals too? Yet another good one is, well, Jesus ate fish. Oh, crying like that. First of all, there is still a big theological discussion going on whether or not we can be sure that Jesus actually ate fish. That's the first thing. Even whole books are being written on this subject. So we're not going to discuss that, but it is questionable. And secondly, we can go back to the fact that Jesus was the final sacrifice, so now we don't have to eat meat anymore. And third, Jesus ate meat in a Middle Eastern context where there weren't as much food as it is today. Everything is different. But today, a thing that the Bible is very clear about is that it's against gluttony. And we could just for reflection ask ourselves if there is somehow a connection between gluttony and eating meat. The behavior of the average meat eater, like, bacon, I'm gonna have another pork chop or whatever, and gluttony. Not for everybody, but it's worth the reflection. I'm just putting it out there. And now we're getting back to one I mentioned right at the beginning, is that God allowed us to eat meat after the flood. When Noah came out of the ark, we were allowed specifically in the Bible to eat meat. It says so very specifically that every living creature on earth is your food now. Now this can make for a long discussion because it's a very, very deep question. But first I'll just have to remind everybody that the original plan was veganism. And as we see it with a lot of things in the Bible, the original plan and what God allowed later on are not the same. The best theological argument I've seen is that the people of this earth has very cold hearts. Just as with divorce, we're not supposed to be divorced, but because of the coldness of our hearts, God allowed it because he saw that we would never be able to keep that promise in this world. And just like that, God allowed us to eat meat because he saw that we were never going to keep that promise. And it was, despite everything, better than eating each other. And I think, honestly, we can all agree to this day. If you have to eat meat, eat animals, not humans. Another place in the Bible, Paul is speaking about eating vegetables only, is for the weak of faith. And I don't think this is a meat eater versus vegan argument, because this has a lot deeper understanding and a lot deeper reflection to it. If you think that your salvation is depending on you only eating vegetables, and you eat only vegetables, then you have a very weak faith. If you only eat vegetables for any other reason, then that's not what Paul is talking about. But he is talking about the fact that if you live your life bound down by all kinds of rules and stuff because of your salvation, you're very weak at heart. Your faith is very weak because Christianity is all about you don't have to do anything for salvation. But you see how that's not really related to veganism at all? Yeah, so just skip that if people use it. Another one that is often heard is the land that is flowing of milk and honey. And once again, this is not literal. This doesn't have anything to do with the drinking of milk per se. It has something to do with lactation and having more cattle. This is referring to that calves can drink their mother's milk, so that calves can survive and the herd can grow big. And the honey, just to get that right, that's not bee honey. They didn't have bee honey back then in the same way that we do now. They had date honey. So that was a sign of enough food. So really, this is just a land of abundance. It doesn't have anything to do with veganism, and it doesn't have anything to do with the consumption for people of milk. That's it. Don't dig any deeper into this. It is just the land of abundance. One you hear one too many times is that animals don't have a soul. And with this one, I just have to say, nope, stop this. Maybe animals don't have the breath of God in them, but they have enough soul that they are considered to be on the new earth. lions and lambs are gonna play together. The children are gonna play with the snake stuff. All of these passages referring to the fact that there are gonna be animals on the new earth. So even though they don't have the soul of God, they still have a soul. They have the animal soul, and they're gonna be with us on the new earth. And that's a very important point. Do you want to treat somebody like that, like we're doing now? That we're gonna be in great company with. We're gonna hug the lion. It's not gonna hurt us. Just think about that. Another one is like, for Christians, it's very important to say nothing is unclean. Very, very important. Nothing in this world is unclean. We can eat anything without asking where it came from, just from our good hearts. And we just have to say this is true. Eating animals is not your one-way ticket to hell. It is not. It's not going to affect your salvation. You can discuss one thing. If you have to quiet down your conscience to eat animals, then I think God would like you to stop eating animals, because you shouldn't act against your conscience every single day. In general, you should feel good about what you do, and your conscience is a great compass for what's right or wrong. But that being said, it's not an argument to become vegan. So just move on from this one, but then move on to something better. Keep the conversation going. Like, yeah, okay, so you're not going to hell for eating animals, but still, let's talk about why it's still not good. So now we have all these meat eater arguments, and we have kind of said something against them, but why do I think we can connect veganism and Christianity? Just in a brief sentence. If we look at the world now, in my eyes, good dominion would be to be vegan. Because we have such an overconsumption of meat that there is no possible way to keep animals responsibly, to not induce enormous amounts of suffering on them if we need to eat this much meat. So I believe that as the world looks now, the best form of dominion is veganism. We need to remember that time has changed since the Bible was written. The meat consumption back then was maybe once a week for rich people, maybe only for Easter for poorer people, maybe not at all. Maybe all they had was fish, or maybe they didn't even have that. And now we have meat 2 to 3 meals a day. If we include milk and eggs and stuff, every meal has some kind of animal product. That's not what we see in the Bible. It's just not. A good point is that in this day and age, veganism is not just a question of animals and animal welfare. It's also a question of the people working in the field, the slaughterhouse workers, the farmers that can work 80-hour work weeks for an entire year, and at the end of the year they made nothing because we want cheap milk. That's just not fair at all. That's modern day slavery. And if you hear the stories and the statistics of slaughterhouse workers, everything indicates that they live horrible lives, that their mentality and their mental health is completely broken down by this job. And there are so many injuries, and it's a dangerous job. It's big animals they handle. So it's a human rights issue too, to stop eating meat. You have to take care of the people too. And if I want to buy super cheap meat and drink milk, I'm not only indirectly keeping animals enslaved. Fair enough, if you don't care about that, I can't change your mind. I can try. But we're also keeping people in indirect slavery. People who cannot get out of this, whose debt is enormous, and who are forced to work so long work weeks. There's no way they can get out of this, and we won't pay the price, so they pay with their lives instead. That's a big part of veganism too. So just to sum up some of the important stuff is that a Christian will believe they are saved by God's grace, and you cannot talk them out of that. Veganism is not equal to salvation. Those two are completely separated. And make the Christian person reflect upon Jesus being the last sacrifice and why we haven't stopped eating animals after he was sacrificed on the cross. I really hope you'll get into some great and deep and honest discussions, Christians and vegans together. And I hope to see a rise in the Christian vegan movement because, as I see it, they go perfectly hand in hand. If you are still here, I am so very proud of you for sticking to the end. It's fantastic. Go down to the comments and tell me what the best Christian media argument you ever heard were and what you answered to it. I would like to hear some stories. And I can just say, James Aspey, if you watch this, I hope you will take the challenge of debating with some Christians in the future because you are a very, very compassionate person. And I bet they'll notice that. I bet they will. And if you're left thinking that I got something completely wrong, just let me know. I can handle it. Educate me in the comments and educate everybody else if I was wrong about something so that we can be just cleverer together. And until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye.